This September, history returns to Kingston.
Back to the Future Music Limited proudly presents the 2025 Grammy Certificate Ceremony, a powerful tribute to some of the unsung heroes behind reggae and dancehall's greatest global achievements.
In collaboration with the Royalty Network Incorporated and Steely and Clevie Productions, we honor not just legends, but legacy. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the first ever Reggae Grammy and 40 years of Steely and Clevie, pioneers of 1980s digital reggae revolution. Join us as we live stream the event
at the iconic ATL Audi showroom on Oxford Road in Kingston, Jamaica, for a red carpet evening of celebration, live music, and long overdue recognition.
Because behind every Grammy moment, there is an unsung hero whose song is about to be sung. Saturday, September 13, 2025.
Audi showroom in Kingston.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.
We're switching gears to health matters. We're discussing building capacity of local wash utilities for sustainable and viable operations. Our guest is Vicky Idoko Pope. She's wash policy and institutional strengthening consultant. Good morning, Vicky. Can you hear us clearly?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me clearly?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great. So I see you are a wash policy and institutional strengthening consultant. What does that really entail in plain English before we get into the conversation proper?
Okay. So, we know what policy is. Policy is the government's intentions towards providing whatever kind of services to the populace. So what I do is help government go from thought to action on WASH, from just developing the policy to structuring what the governance would look like, and actual implementation of the policy and governance, and helping to build the organizations that will deliver on the government's intentions. So is that any clearer, or is that more jargon so that I can bring it down? Does that sound a lot clearer than what you thought?
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. Now, why is WASH so important? Why is it such a huge deal that government is willing to spend so much in implementing policies on WASH? Why do we need WASH? And what exactly, I do understand WASH is an acronym. First of all, what does it stand for, and why is it so important at this point in time?
WASH means water, and sanitation and hygiene. And as you can see, water is the base. And then, of course, sanitation, we all understand what sanitation means. The importance of WASH basically is public health, is the health of individuals. And, health underscores everything that any society can be. You have to be healthy in order to be productive. So our economic development hinges on WASH. Water basically is not just the existence of water in itself, but water that can be consumed by human beings, and water also that can be used for sanitation and hygiene, and water also that can be used for things like agriculture. So WASH is really a very wide, is a wide, all-encompassing a term that is being used. The United Nations has designated water and sanitation as human rights issues, that every human being is entitled or should have access to good quality water and sanitation services. So the government, our government, Nigerian government, also signed on to the WASH mandate that is the development goals, which is 6.0 and 6.0. So that's 6.1, 6.2, so let me not bore you with the details on that. But other than that, the United Nations mandates that we should provide water and sanitation to our people, it is a necessity to even exist in this world. So does that explain? I don't want to like use too much jargon. So when I'm going off, please feel free to tell me to calm down.
Will do. I'll keep that in mind. But I
All
want
right.
to know what has been the impact of WASH in Africa and particularly in Nigeria, seeing that Africa as a whole is still battling availability of good quality clean water to, its inhabitants. How far has WASH actually gone, in achieving its goals? We don't even have good water.
I agree with you. We don't have water. The access to wash services and particularly water, access is still very, is below 50% all over Africa. Some countries are doing better than others. Countries like Senegal and Burkina Faso, they're leading. Uh, in Nigeria, I think we have about maybe at best 40%. You know that you and I know that mostly in Nigeria, mostly our main source of good quality water supply has been the boreholes, individual boreholes that we have in almost every household. Before you start building a house, you sink a borehole to get water. But then also, but that is only something that is available mostly to the rich, quote unquote rich, because the majority of our population we know live below the quality, below the poverty line. So the majority of our population do not have access to drinkable, good quality water. Even the boreholes that we tout as good water, that we every household in the so-called elite neighborhoods have, the water from there is questionable. If you were ever able to go test the water that comes out of your borehole, you might not be so feeling so good about it. So it's for this reason that the best way for us to get good quality water is to get our utilities working, to get our water utilities working.
All right, talking about utilities, let's bring this home a little bit. Could you define what local wash utilities mean? What exactly are those utilities? Are they infrastructure? Are they human resource? What exactly are local wash utilities, and what are their roles in building capacity?
Well, the water utility, for example, I know that we talk about wash utilities. It used to be that when we're talking about a utility, we're actually talking about the organization whose job it is to give us water. In Nigeria, they started off being water boards, and now they are morphing into water corporations. But every state has, or almost every state has a water corporation. Sanitation is, we're just in the beginning phases of trying to build utilities that specialize on sanitation. There's a lot of discussion going on. There's a lot of policies being developed, and there's a lot of laws being passed and regulation and all of that that is going on to help us be able to step into properly into sanitation. But your water utility is the main, in every state right now, the main existing organization that we can say, a wash organization that we can say we have right now, has been the water utilities. And they are usually called either water board or water corporation. They are, let me kind of back off a little bit and let you know that it is not just the water board that is responsible for making water available or sanitation services available to the populace. Wash services are provided in an ecosystem of organizations. One of those, for example, is what will the federal government do, what will the state governments do, and what will the local governments do. The federal government has its role to play, and the federal government over the years since the early 2000s has quickened its processes, its reforms, and all of that to kind of like help the rest of the country join in the wash sector reforms. However, the shop floor of all of this is what the utilities will do, because the way the whole thing is structured is that the utilities are the ones that will actually purify water, distribute it, and send it to our homes. The key problem, that the key issues that we've been tackling have been water infrastructure. And we're beginning to talk about wash infrastructure now. But one of the key issues that we are battling with is the fact that the water infrastructure or the wash infrastructure as a whole is very, very expensive. And investments in the sector is not really close to what is needed. So we have most of our utilities are battling with not even having the appropriate water treatment plants, or the distribution networks don't work. The ones that work is not enough. They don't extend, especially to the poor areas. In sanitation, we are now beginning to make sure that homes now have usable toilets. But as we know, if you have toilets in your homes, you still need water to keep the toilets working. And then even in public health, most of our cities do not have, we don't have any way of disposing of our waste, other than the septic systems that we built into each home, which is also polluting our water source, which is the boreholes. We're hoping that we will get to a place where we now have sewage systems, which is the proper way to dispose of say your sanitation situations. So we don't yet have that in most parts of the country. Even in the big cities, what we have is basically we have these people who come in with their tanks to evacuate our septic systems periodically when they are full. So that's what we have now. So And the reason behind all of this is because of the lack of investments in infrastructure. The government is trying, there has been a lot of inroads made, but it's not near even 30% of what is needed in the country.
Right, the numbers aren't quite encouraging, but I have this to ask you though. Given the inadequacies and the shortfalls in Nigeria's wash infrastructure and framework, and you are the expert, how would you advise Nigeria going forward? Yes, we know we don't have all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed, but given the resources that we do have, because we do have something, what's the way forward for WASH?
Like I said, the government has made some honest efforts to rehabilitate our infrastructure, to even build new ones. But because of the shortage of investments, there's so much. Right now, we know what the situation is. Economically, the government is battling a lot. And the level of investment that is needed to really get us up to where we should be, I don't think is within the government reach. We have been getting grants, we have been borrowing money, the government has been putting allocations in its budget to support our wash sector, but it's not going to be enough. In one of the key areas that we urgently need to explore is bringing in the private sector. We know that, for example, that our people are willing to pay for water. Even the poorest people buy pure water, right? And we know that our people really would pay for water if they could get it regularly. So that in itself makes the wash sector a viable market that the private sector can get into. But also, in order for the private sector to get into it, we have to also make sure that there are regulations in place that protect the investment of the private sector when they come in. We also want to make sure that the government continues to do or accelerates what it should be doing in order to provide the proper policy environment for the private sector to come in. I know that the president has been working with the FCT minister, for example, to try to get more private sector into the wash sector. I know Lagos has been working on it, and other states really have been working on it. But we're in an emergency situation. The whole world, as we know, is changing. We're on the verge of a major change in the world again. And Africa must look inwards. We must look to our people to come in to help the wash sector. The utilities that we have had since the independence, pre-independence, that have now morphed into water corporations are not strong enough to carry the burden. So when the private sector comes in, there are different ways they can come in. They can come in with the water production from extraction to purification, to distribution, to even the commercial services, helping with the collection of bills, and making sure that we have revenue coming in that will support the operations of the utilities. We can also help. By granting real autonomy to the utilities when they come in. More autonomy simply means that the utilities are free to invest in the business. They are free to manage their own people. They are free to manage the infrastructure. They are free to manage the operations and to deal directly with the customers without undue or untold government interference. So when you have free utilities, then the utilities can now set up to build into organizations that are very viable. Right now, most of our utilities are funded and controlled by the government. They are controlled either directly or indirectly. And so with all the work that you might put into trying to build viable utilities, it all kind of goes, it doesn't survive. Its sustainability become an issue because when we have changes in government, things change again, and the utilities are fighting to stay on top of what they should be doing in order to become viable organizations. So the very first thing is that we have to remove the hands of the government and move the government to the role of the policymaker, providing the legal framework and regulating the sector, and then leave the actual provision of services to the utilities, even if they are corporations owned by government or they are corporations owned by private organizations, so that they can do what they know best, which is to provide services to the people. So in order to build the capacity of these organizations that we hope will take on the provision of services effectively, the very first thing is freedom from the shackles of the government. So the next thing after that is that in the wash sector worldwide, privatization is not the way we'll say, take a government institution and just go ahead, sell it to a private organization to run. Simply means allowing the private sector to come in to build their own. So you unbundle the services that are being provided, then the private sector can come in different sections of the unbundling. And so for example, you might have a distribution company that is in charge of, say, Ikoyi, or in charge of just Enugu, or even sections of Enugu. This is how it works around in most of the developed world, so that the burden, the entire burden of providing direct services leaves the government's hands and falls with organizations that are specially set up to do this. We cannot sustain the current situation that we have with the water corporations expected to produce water, distribute it, collect enough money to cover their expenses, when the majority of the workers are government workers. We've had instances where the government simply goes in and transfers out the management cadre to whatever part of the civil service. And WASH is a very, very specialized sector. So we want, so the area of autonomy simply says, here, you take the organization, build it to how it should be, and so that it can begin to provide the services that it needs. The government still has the responsibility of making sure that people have water and that people have sanitation services, but the government should not be in the service of direct service provision.
It seems to me that you just described public partnership, public-private partnership, PPP. But then again, will this framework that you just described play out effectively in Nigeria, just to have the government take the back seat as the policy maker while private individuals take on, distribution and things like that. Do you think this framework you just described is feasible in Nigeria?
It is. It is. If we have clear laws, if the government intention through its policies, first of all, they are clear, and we have clear laws, and we have institutions that have their own mandate or that the roles are clearly spelled out. The area that the government, because the government has the responsibility to ensure that people get good water and sanitation services, the government would, ordinarily be anxious about making sure that this is being done. So then the government sets up institutions like the water boards and the water corporations to make sure that they are providing the services. But as I already said, the government cannot really go on and continue to be the water or the service provider. It doesn't work. Around the world, what you are calling PPP is what is making it work. And the way the government can help is making sure that there is proper regulation. A lot of the states have set up regulatory agencies, but they are all at infancy, and we are trying to figure out, and that's another whole thing, because these regulatory agencies mostly are still government organizations. And in the world, on the average, a regulatory agency is a semi-government organization. And so the independence that the regulators should have is also not too, it's not too robust. So as we are starting now, we need to make sure that we are doing it right. But proper regulation, a clear institutional roles, and the existence of government policies that support the role of the private sector in the wash sector will enable this, what you are calling PPP, to become a viable option in Nigeria. It is being done in other countries, and it is yielding good results.
All right, interesting. But before we let you go, Vicky, and in 3 minutes, could you tell us, where is Nigeria on the recycling of waste, sewage, and water? I do realize waste recycling is on the washer's purview. Where is Nigeria currently on these? I see you smiling.
We are at the starting, we're basically just starting, but some encouraging inroads have been made. There have been private individuals or private organizations that have just come in and realized that there are these are viable business options, that you can come in and recycle. You can come in and set up, situations, for example, when we're traveling on the road, when you're traveling you have we travel long distance in Nigeria, hundreds of kilometers from city to city or from city to villages and so on. And there are points where the vehicles have these rest stops where you can go to the bathroom, to ease yourself, to eat. And usually these toilets that we use on the roads, they are set up by private individuals. They're private individuals or some organizations that allows us to use it for a little bit of money, and they use that to sustain it. So that in itself is a PPP. But what we really need is to put in place real formal structure that allows the private companies to come in and set up this in whole scale. And when we set up agreements with these private institutions, the government must, it must go from government to government. We can't have, when there's a regime change and then agreements that are made then jettisoned, and private sector, it really erodes private sector confidence in the sector, in the wash sector. So the government will keep its promises when it signs contracts with the private sector. We ourselves will try to build viable organizations that will be able to provide services. We can't continue to rely on just grants and loans and all of that just to be able to provide the services, the wash services that are needed. The private sector must come in, and we need an enabling environment for the private sector to come in. And then whatever organizations are set up, it should not be test cases. It should be real organizations that have come to stay in the sector, so that we can have sustainability in their operations. So that said, Nigeria, I know we've had numbers, figures. When we go to our conferences, we say things like 67% and all of that, but we have work to do. We have a lot of work to do, and the way to look at it is look at what other countries like Senegal and Burkina Faso and even Zambia, a lot of other countries are making leaps and bounds. We can do better than we are doing. We have a lot of specialists in the sector in Nigeria, and we have a lot of willingness in the heads of utilities in Nigeria, but implementation has not been up to par where our intentions are. So if we work hard and with good intentions, we know what to do. So it's really translating the intentions into action and making sure that they are sustainable. This is where we can close the gap and make room for the private sector and see that our next phase of development in the sector is really the private sector coming in, and then our wash sector can begin to progress the way that it should.
Vicky Hope Idoko, thank you so much for your time and for your deep insights. We appreciate you.
Thank you. It is nice to be here. I will be back whenever you guys need me to. Thank you so much.
And we'll be so glad to have you back.
All right. Thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere. New Day continues right after this break.
Abuja, stand up, cause Shalimar's coming to town.
We are Shalimar. We will be performing all of our hit songs at our show at the International Conference Center in Abuja on October 4th.
Powered by Classic FM, the station that plays every song you know.
Make that move right now, baby.
Tickets are also available online at www.tix.africa/Shalimar. So make that move and celebrate this year's Independence Day like never before. 4th of October at the International Conference Center with Shalimar, because we'll be jamming over and over again.